Where are you based out of?
I'm in Arizona.
Oh, cool. I was just in Arizona.
Yeah. I wanted to show you this actually right here. I don't know if you recognize it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Of course.
My wife actually had gone to the signing and got that signed for me.
Wait, so I met her.
Yeah.
Did she have the little one with her?
Yeah, she had him with her.
Yes. Oh, your kid was so cute. I remember.
Yeah, little curly haired.
That's so
curly-haired boy. Thank you once again for taking the time out to answer these questions here with me. Yeah, so I've got a few questions here. Also, I gotta say, I've been a huge fan of Yu-Gi-Oh since I was a child. So having this conversation with you is like a dream come true.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and it's great to talk to you.
To get things started off, how long have you been doing work in voice acting, and how did you first get into that?
So the origin story is I just it was around probably about 2001. I had graduated from NYU not that long ago, and I was living in the city and doing the thing, cater waitering, and and auditioning when I could. And basically, someone called up someone from the acting program I was in, and they were like, we need guys who aren't in the union who will work for cheap, and we need them like this morning. So they were auditioning for a role on a version of Ultraman, and the American dub, and they were like, my school was like, yeah, here are 3 guys that probably fit the bill, and I went in and I auditioned that morning, and it was for a motorcycle riding alien who saves the day, helps out Ultraman, I guess. And I auditioned in the morning, and I got the job that afternoon, and I went back to the studio later that day, and I recorded my first ever voiceover. And that was how it began. And like a lot of things, it just went from there. It went from, I did my job. I showed up on time. I got it recorded. And I guess I was pleasant enough to deal with. And then they had more work for me. So I went back and I did a few different voices on that show. And when the director of that show got moved over it was this small studio that 4 kids would farm out work to. And the director on this show did more work with, got moved over to Yugioh to direct Yugioh. And at the time, Yugioh in America had sort of just begun a few months prior. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea about, the history of it or the character. And, but the director I worked with was like, hey, why don't you come in and audition for this? He's the bad guy. And I got the job. I recorded the episode. They changed their mind and I lost the job. And then they changed their mind again and I got the job back, and I recorded the episode, I think 2 or 3 different ways before landing on, the voice that, that eventually would become the voice of Marik.
Yes, it's true. I am indeed the real Marik, you fools.
And honestly, from there, just like a lot of things, it just sort of sprungboard. It was a springboard from getting that job. And then it's like once someone takes a chance on you, it's a lot easier for other people to take a chance on you. So that job got me an agent, and that agent got me other voiceover work. And then, and then I've been doing it, I guess now for 20 years, I've been doing voiceover work. Wow. It just hit me for the first time. So thanks. My own mortality just hit me right now.
Yeah, so you could say that the Yu-Gi-Oh series has had a really big impact on your life.
Oh yeah, it definitely it right now I'm doing almost entirely audiobooks
Mhm.
from the from the safety and comfort of my basement, the little box I made in the basement. And uh and that's like one other thing that was sort of a direct offshoot from booking Yu-Gi-Oh, which was a direct offshoot from booking this like tiny alien motorcycle riding dude, one day in 2001, or 2002, I guess. Yeah, it's but yeah, it all came from that. Yu-Gi-Oh was like the big linchpin, I would say.
Did you always kind of know that you could, change your voice, or was that something that kind of you practice a lot as like as in your younger years as to like kind of create characters?
Yes, I didn't know it as like this is a thing that's a job.
Mhm.
Like as a kid, like you reach that point where you understand that like you're watching a cartoon and then there's someone making the voice. Or I don't know how old I was when I realized that. I in my head it's around the time of He-Man,
Mhm.
where I loved He-Man, but I also sort of realized that like someone was making voices, right? And I guess I was always a weird kid and a little bit of the class clown, and I liked making my parents laugh with the voices, and I liked making classmates laugh with voices. I never thought it would be a job, although I was really into theater and acting and all that stuff from a pretty early age, like late towards the end of elementary school. Like that was the thing that I would do. So like I got the idea that like you could be a character, and that was fun and it was exciting. But it's funny, it was that kind of thing where like I think particularly with Yu-Gi-Oh, like more so with Yu-Gi-Oh, because it wasn't just like, oh, I did like 4 lines on this one show and 15 lines on this other show. It was like, oh, I'm the bad guy, right? Like I'm a cartoon bad guy. And when that happened, it was that thing where it was like, wait, has that been a lifelong dream of mine? I think it's been a lifelong dream of mine. I think I always wanted to be a cartoon bad guy. And like I did, like retroactively was like, yes, that is something I've always wanted. I just didn't realize it until I was in the middle of it.
It's about time.
This won't take too long.
And because you've done so much work in voice acting, do you ever find yourself just like randomly thinking in character, or just kind of like randomly speak in character?
Yeah, all the time, and it really annoys my kids. My neither. I've learned that when I read books to my kids, neither of my kids likes when I do voices. Mm-hmm. So like, yes, the answer is yes. I think it all the time. I do it in work, but I am not allowed to bring my work home with me. Don't talk like that, Daddy. Now, especially the older one, because it's like, it's embarrassing to, have Dad break out his cartoon voices.
I feel like I should have been a voice actor, maybe like in a different life, because I often do the same thing. Even as a kid, I learned to mimic very, very quickly. Because I just used to watch a lot of movies, and I always watched all these movies, a lot of comedies with people just doing really silly voices. So I picked that up very early, and I'm pretty sure it annoyed my parents to death because I was constantly like mimicking Mike Myers or Jim Carrey.
Well, and it's like, you don't know that's a job. Like, you don't know. Mm-hmm. It's like, I could make money doing these voices that are annoying my parents so much. Like, oh, you can make the money. Not a lot of money, but you can make money.
Yeah. And I still do that to this day, like with my wife. I don't think they're very good, but she says my impressions are very good. Like I do this, like every time like we watch like The Dark Knight or whatever, I'll be doing, like Bane's voice, or I do this like there's another thing I do in the car is that she's really annoyed by is I do like Eddie Vedder covers of different songs.
It's funny.
So yeah, I'll just throw on like an Eddie Vedder voice and just like sing the song. And she's like, please stop.
Doing a horrible Eddie Vedder impression.
Wow, thanks for sure. I'm Eddie Vedder and I love the Cubs. My voice sounds exactly like this.
Yeah, but it's so funny. It's like that there is there is like a pretty direct line from like being playful and just, I mean, like, you know, I wasn't ever like a great mimic, but it would be like my bad mimicry sometimes would become voices I would do. Like I wouldn't be able to do a Keanu Reeves, but like a bad attempt at Keanu Reeves would like become like, you know, like, whoa, like, oh yeah, we're doing this character. And be like, it's not Keanu Reeves, but like there, it's like a third other character that like, you know, my poor attempt, you know, becomes like that soldier in the background in G.I. Joe. And that's, yeah, there it is that like that playfulness that I think becomes, you know, a big part of it. So being silly in the car can totally pay off, even if it annoys your wife.
And is that the kind of approach you took when like coming up with the voice for Marik?
Yeah, it's funny. It's all hazy now, like exactly what happened and what's the story I tell myself. Basically, the voice I did at the very beginning, where I got the job before I lost the job. Part of the reason I lost the job is they decided it was way too close to Pegasus.
Yugi boy, whatever you say, Yugi boy, Yugi boy, Yugi boy, Yugi boy.
And like, you know, looking at, you know, earlier drawings of, not earlier drawings, but my, like before I recorded it, where you'd look at the character and you'd hear a little bit about him. And, you know, the first thing that I found in him was like, you know, there's this like aura of magic, right? Like, and this like power and this confidence. And then, you know, like you can't have two Pegasi. So I think when I came back to it, and they were like, just do something different. Like, it was like, well, what's opposite of that? And like, what's still true to the character? And I do not mean to diminish Marik at all, but I think like another, like the other colors that I saw in him early on, like there is a little bit of like brattiness, that kind of like that little kid thing where like you're like, you haven't realized that your parents have been letting you win. And the first time that you lose, you like can't believe it. And so like, that sort of like got the little like, yeah, like, and then like, it was like, well, I don't want it to be as lyrical as Pegasus is and like the lofty. So like, that's when like the gravel came in. And so like, to like mix that then with the power behind the character and also like the fun he had in being evil, you see the character and you think of these words and like what comes out of your mouth, you know, and I think that's what, that's how we ended up with that character. It was bratty and powerful and having a real good time. And that mix ended up being, you know, what ended up being Marik.
It's very interesting. So do you have a favorite Marik line? I'm pretty sure you get that all the time.
The one I go to the quickest would be I'm going to banish you to the Shadow Realm. And it's always the laugh. The laugh was always really key to that. I sometimes would go in for recording sessions and felt like most of the session was me laughing in ways to like match the flap. Like we need a 4-syllable laugh. Like it would be like, that would be my whole day. It's a lot of laughing.
Was there any other character like besides Marik that you thought was like really cool that you often wish that you could have voiced?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because like, you know, I'm from Jersey, and not that Joey is canonically from Jersey. I don't think he is, but like there was always something about like a Yug that like,
yeah,
that I always, and it was also like that thing where like, you know, Joey never, I'm sure he did everyone hurts their voice in the booth once in a while, but like Marik was like so grating and so like hard on the throat that I did envy characters like Joey who would just be in there and go like I'd be like, that would be instead of like like, oh man, like after the 4th hour of that, I was like, please just let me be Joey. There was already a Joey.
Hello? I marked that door so we'd know that we already went down this path.
We were talking a little bit earlier about when you first got into it, you really didn't know much about the Yu-Gi-Oh series and stuff like that, and the card game that went with it. Have you in recent time like kind of looked into that or ever gotten into the card game?
I can't do it. I've had people like try to teach it to me, and like I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know if I partied too hard in college. Like I can't. And like it's embarrassing because then it's like people will talk to me and I'll be like, I don't know what's going. And I would record episodes and be like, what's happening? And they'd be like, we don't know. Someone would know. There was always someone around who knew exactly what was going on in the card game and what the stakes were and like why it was a big deal. But I would like take on faith when they would be like, oh, you're playing. Like it was very clear that like, oh yeah, Winged Dragon of Ra. Like I know like
yeah.
I get the ideas that like, oh, that's a powerful card. But like if I sat down to play, I would like if it was playing for money, I would lose all my money. I did the voice in a video game for it, and I was so excited to hear my voice on a video game, and I never got to hear it because I never got far. I could never get past the first level. I was like, well, I'll never hear. I don't know what level I was on, but like, I'll never hear Marik on the video game until I get good at it, and I'm never going to get good at it. Like I said, someone always knows what's going on, but after like the 40th episode, and like no one has any time, and they're like, we have you booked for like half an hour. Like you're just going to come in and you're going to like laugh and you're going to grunt and you're going to play this like, one card in attack mode, and it'd be like, we don't have time to explain what's going on. Like just we have this booth 30 minutes before Yugi comes in and records for 4 hours. We're just gonna get it done. But like sometimes it would be like, and like at the very beginning, it would, like I studied to be an actor, and it would be like, well, what's going on for Marik? Like, where is he coming from? Like what's driving him in this moment? And after a while, the character well enough that you don't have to do that work. You just get that like, oh, this is bad for Marik. You would just skip a few steps.
Yeah. I used to be very much into, right now I'm still into Yu-Gi-Oh, like the collecting side of the card game. I used to be into actually competing, and I was actually very good. I rarely ever lost. But the card game has changed so much now that like I'm part of the generation that is called Yugi boomers. I don't know if you've ever heard that term.
I don't know what that makes me, but it's good.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not even that old though, but I'm considered part of this old generation of Yu-Gi-Oh players.
Oh my God. That's it's funny. I went to the world champion, or I guess the nationals, not world championships. 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago in Nashville. And it was wild. It's so cool to see that. When you get that big room and everyone's, like it gets really tense and just really, those tournaments are really, they're very cool. I really enjoyed watching it play out, even if I didn't know what was going on.
But I just find it funny that we'll go to these card shops and they'll be having tournaments, and I'm just kind of standing around looking, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, what is going on? I'm like, when did that become a thing? Like, I don't even know that card.
But I guess it's that. But it must be cool. Like the game. It must be why it has staying powers that I guess it can evolve and change and still keep people interested in playing. Is definitely cool. Even if someone was like, oh yeah, you're from the classic old series, and I was like, oh no, classic and old. I'm finally there.
Yeah, because I'm friends with a lot of the guys at the card shops, and I'm like, hey, remember? Yeah, you should you should get back into it. You used to be really good. And I'm like, no, I'm these young kids would just like embarrass me. I wouldn't want to do that to myself.
You're like, we just watched Cars for the first time. You're like Doc Hudson. You're like,
yeah,
God, kid, you don't know. You don't know how to make that turn.
When I had my wife watch the original series, she was always like, that doesn't seem right. How is he able to do this? Like, how is he able to do all these moves in like a single turn? And I'm like,
Right.
well, back in the day, you couldn't. Now, because the game has evolved so much that it's so fast, you actually could do all of these moves that Yugi was doing in the show that, back in the day, you're like, that's impossible. You can never do that in one move. Now, like, you could literally win an entire game on the first move.
It seems unfair. This is gonna be my new platform. These whippersnappers today out there playing Yu-Gi-Oh, winning on one turn. That's not how the game's supposed to be played.
And you've also done work on Pokemon and One Piece. With your experiences in these different animes, would you consider yourself an anime fan now?
Would consider myself an anime appreciator. There's a lot I'm always thinking about watching. Mm-hmm. Time is, when you have a kid, it's like it's all Coco Melon. It's all Coco Melon and Peppa Pig. So like there's not, I imagine like there might be a day where like the shows I've been curious about watching will align with my kids' interests, whether that's when they're 8 or whether it's when they're 15 or like, who knows? They'll probably not want to sit down with me and watch it anyway. Mm-hmm. But like it's like such a cool and very specific art form, and it's wild to me how it's completely permeated the culture. So like there's a lot of stuff that I'm always hearing about, and I'm like, I would love to check that out one day. Even shows that I'm working on. I'm not doing many, but like they brought back the original cast of Shaman Kings. Mm-hmm. To do the new version that's up on Netflix now. And like, it's been so fun. And, I've gotten to watch some of it as I've been watching. And I'm like, oh man, I'd really love to watch the show. I just know I don't have, I don't have the time bandwidth to sit down and watch some of that stuff. But it seems like there's so many different shows for so many different audiences now, that there's the more intense adult shows and there's the good introductory shows. When I was younger, it would be like someone had like a bad quality video cassette of Ghost in the Shell. Like, like that's like, it's cool how available it is and how, it's just everywhere. I wish I got to know more of it. That's the thing. Like all these shows always sound cool. Mm-hmm. But there's only time for Coco Melon.
So usually also on my live streams and like podcasts and stuff, we usually talk about like film and all this other stuff. Like, do you happen to have a favorite movie?
Of all time, I always go with E.T. It hits that for me. It hits the sweet spot of like actually being a great movie, being a movie where my perspective on it has changed from the time I was a kid to when I was, a young man to like now being a dad. It's, and watching it with my kids. It's one of the few movies I've seen with my kids where like they've responded to in the way that I like secretly hoped they would respond to it. How about you? What's number one for you?
But for me, my favorite movie of all time is The Godfather.
Of course, that's great. Mm-hmm. The fight I have with a fight I have with my wife a lot is about where she's only seen Godfather 1. And I'm like, yeah, but then you haven't really seen it. And she's like, shut the fuck up. When are we going to sit down to watch for 3 hours to watch Godfather Part 2 anytime soon? Like we'll do it when the kids are in college. We'll put on Godfather 2. Yeah, it's great movie. And for me, like number one gets like the legacy spot, and then like everything after that on the list is just super murky. It changes order all the time. Die Hard's up there. The Apartment is really high up there for me. I'm a big movie guy. I love movies. It's like often about like number one for me is always about like where you are in time when you saw it and the impact it made on you. And then as opposed to some movies that like, where you watch them at a specific time and then you rewatch them and they lose something. Like like for me, my number one, I've only gained when I watch it again.
So you think Rad is gonna hold up for you when you watch it again?
No, I'll never watch it. I won't watch it again. But I don't want to do that to myself.
You want to see fun? Here, follow me.
This is what?
This is ass sliding.
And it's fun. It's also like, the experience of having kids where, you are like, you are rewatching movies but you're watching them through a whole new filter. Like so my daughter and I, a few weeks ago watched, the very first Spider-Man, mostly because I thought it would be the most accessible, for my daughter, who's 6. She seemed to be enjoying it. We got up to like the final act and she was like, Daddy, I'm bored. And I was like, well, we have like the big scene. We have like 20 minutes left, 25 minutes. She was like, no, I'm leaving. And she like left. And it's that thing where like, as we were watching it, like you see things, and especially now with, No Way Home out, we're like, yeah, like you see some of the flaws and you also see how like in so many different ways in terms of filmmaking and representation and all of those things, how like we've grown and things have changed. And like, I'm hesitant to show my daughter Spider-Verse just quite yet. Cause like, I don't want to blow it. Like, I'm not so upset about like, she didn't love Spider-Man, but it's like, oh man, like, I don't want to hide that it's really important that you like Spider-Verse, but like, that's the thing, like as a, movie watching culture, like we're building on that stuff. Like I loved watching Spider-Man with her. I was having a great time. But like, if she's not into it, like that's not on her, like that's because like the rhythms have changed and movie, and like, sometimes that's just what's going to happen. We watched, we went to a drive-in not too long ago, she and I, to watch It's a Wonderful Life. And man, for like a super old black and white movie that's really long, way past her bedtime, she was like so into it. Like you don't know what's gonna connect for someone in a way that's like hard to explain. I took us on a weird tangent, but yeah, I love movies.
Yeah, and I mean the tangent is good because that's what I love so much about talking movies with people is you get to see like just how passionate everyone is about it, because I'm in the same boat with my son where I try to watch these older movies. Like yesterday we watched Little Monsters with Fred Savage. Oh, and I was thinking like
that would be one where I'd be like, this did not hold up. Like that's one where I'm like, I don't know about putting that on. It's not going to be what it was in my memory, is my guess. Was that your experience?
A little bit, yeah, because I was just more worried about like, it wasn't something that I wanted to watch with him. I just kind of put it on and he comes into the room and he's like, oh, what are you watching? And I'm like, oh, it's a movie called Little Monsters. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you'll like it. He's like, okay, but he doesn't like
he's kind of
he'll like something. Yeah, he'll be like, oh, you don't think I'll like it? Oh, okay, so
challenge
accepted. Yeah. So yeah, now I know if I want him to enjoy something with me, I'll be like, I don't know if you'll like it. Right. But yeah, I'm
going to put on Lord of the Rings, but you're probably going to hate it. Have you done Lord of the Rings? Have you done Lord of the Rings with him yet?
Yeah, he actually was really into it.
I can't imagine. My wife is like, she's like, it's too soon. It's like nightmare fuel. But I think maybe 7.5, maybe. A bright spot in the pandemic was last year. Our local movie theater was shut down. So they replaced it with a drive-in. Like the owners set up shop, at the swim club parking lot for a year. And there was mostly, like older movies, and man, that was so much fun to like. It was like a really fun way to like introduce my kid to like Back to the Future. Huge hit with her. And like that was one of those moments where you're like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't know what I would have done if you rejected Back to the Future.
Yeah, I still have a few of those. Lord of the Rings is one of them where I was just like, oh, please like it, because if not, then it's gonna be really bad. Yeah. But we actually even watched the funny enough, he sat through the whole thing, and we had watched the extended edition, and I was like, I don't know if he's gonna want to sit through like almost 10 hours of the Lord of the Rings. But
right, especially those extended editions.
Yeah, but
they're long. Those extended, I remember, like, it's great, but
they are long. I think the Return of the King is like 4.5 hours long almost.
I don't, and like you said, like I don't even remember what's extra in there. I remember liking it. My favorite directors are really good at collaborating with other people in a way where like it makes their work stronger. I guess kind of what I love about Steven Spielberg is that like it seems like there's almost like sometimes when you have a director who's like completely like way overboard, egotistical and vain, like you end up with terrible stuff, and sometimes you end up with great stuff, and sometimes you end up with great stuff in the terrible stuff. Like, man, I don't know if Old is a good movie or a terrible movie. I think it's both. But like, both. I kind of thought about it a lot this year, and like, I do. But like, it's like, man, I do wish there was someone that guy could talk to be like, hey, do you think this idea is good? Oh, it's not good. Oh, let me think about it some more then. Like, that's like. I wish I think, it's that when directors are good collaborators and trust other people, like that's when you get like the best blend of for me at least, of like a singular vision with, a satisfying story told.
I also felt that way about Malignant. I don't know if you saw Malignant.
Yeah.
I was watching it with my wife, and it was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, yet it's absolutely brilliant.
That movie was so much fun. And I know I did, like a lot of people, like that was one where, my movie watching time is usually like, because the house needs to be quiet for recording. Usually the day is, the kids are here, and then I work at night. And my wife tries to get some work done at night. And then like when everyone's asleep, I like fold some laundry and watch like half an hour of a movie or something. And I know the night I was folding that laundry on Malignant night, and as I was watching it, I was seeing tweets come in about like how batshit insane it was. And I was like, oh man, am I not going to sleep tonight? And like, I was like an hour and a half later, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm watching. I don't know when I'm going to have another forum to give my Malignant complaint. Mostly spoiler free. So early on in the movie, the husband, they're in the house, they're in the creepy house, and the husband's like going around the kitchen and he's doing stuff. And there's this shot as he's like doing something with the blender of like the blender blades. And I had that moment, that horror movie moment where you're like, oh no, the blender blades. But then nothing ever happened with the blender blades. And I feel it's that Chekhov's gun, like the blender never went off. And then I was like waiting for the whole movie. I was like, something's going to happen with this. Why would they have a close up of those blender blades? That's my one Malignant complaint. Everything else, A+. Those blender blades, we got to talk with James Wan. Do you have a favorite thing you've seen this year?
I recently watched The Last Duel. I think that's probably my favorite.
I have to check it out. Yeah, that's high on the list to check out.
Because I spent.
Sorry, I missed it. I'm sorry, I missed it in the theaters.
Yeah, I think everyone is. It's one of those
everyone missed it in the theaters.
Yeah, I was like talking to a friend of mine about that whole like Ridley Scott thing about like and no one watching in theaters, but like it's one of those movies that the promotion again just wasn't there. I saw like one trailer for it on YouTube when I was watching a video and an ad,
and you're like,
and that
what
was
is
it.
This?
Yeah, and I never saw any kind of promotion for it. And so when I did finally see it, I'm like, why wasn't this promoted more? Like it's actually really, really good.
It sounds like everyone who's seen it is like, that movie rocks. But I'll like everything, I guess I'll stream it soon. Yeah, it's high on the list.
So yeah, I saw that one, King Richard with Will Smith.
Oh yeah,
that was actually really good. And
we like that one.
And I recently watched Spencer yesterday with my wife.
Oh,
the Princess Diana movie.
Yeah.
Despite what people think about Kristen Stewart as an actress, she was actually very, very good. Probably my favorite performance of this year is Kristen Stewart as Diana.
She's great, man. Like I think it's just like, think it's kind of hard to be good in a Twilight movie.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, no one in that
lesson,
movie was
right. Like, you know, especially in those roles, or I don't know. I don't mean to slam Twilight. I don't want to take anything away from anyone. You know, but I think probably those roles aren't the most fun and dynamic as opposed to playing like Princess Di. I remember when, again, I'm kind of old. Like I remember when Heath Ledger was cast in The Dark Knight, and people were like, "Well, he's a good actor, but like, he's gonna be the Joker." Like it just didn't seem to like vibe initially with like anyone's ideas, and then that like first trailer came out, and it's like, "Oh no, we were wrong." Like, oh, we get it. Like sometimes you have to wait to see like what some filmmaker sees to pass that kind of judgment.
That's why I always usually kind of hold off any kind of judgment from any casting until I see some like set photos or a first trailer. Before that, if I just hear like announcements, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, that could be interesting.
Last Duel, Spencer, like I have no doubt that I'll see them. I'll probably see them, you know, in the short term before I get to, I'm lucky I get to vote in the, you know, the Screen Actors Guild Awards. You know, and we get sent DVDs of everything that's not already on streaming. So like I'm looking forward to catching up on those soon. Like a lot of those movies, I'm willing. It's like I'll wait to see it for myself. Like you know, like even if they get like lousy reviews, like I'm curious enough to wait and pass my own judgment on those.
You had said that you recently gone back to the theaters. What's the last movie you watched in theaters? Like a lot of people, I'm on a hiatus, but it was No Way Home. It was was a great movie to be the last one to take a break on. But I was back to I was kind of getting back to like once a week for a while, and then you know, and now take that little break. Might go back for Scream. I don't know. I don't know. I'm definitely but for a lot of reasons I'm like a big time theater guy, like I love that experience, even if it just forces me to like not be on my phone. Because like there's some movies like it's good watching a movie with my wife because she'll yell at me if I start making the move from my phone. So like I know I really, really liked The Power of the Dog. It's on Netflix now. And man, if I was watching it on my own, I would have watched it like half an hour at a time. It's great. It's not a thrill a minute. Like it's not even like a knock on it. It's like the kind of movie that like builds up to its ending. And it's like a movie that I think is a lot better once you get to the ending and think about the last 2 hours. But man, if I had to watch that movie by myself half hour at a time, I'd be like, oh, it kind of sucked. But like watching it, you know, it's that thing where like it's like when you go to a theater and like you get the screen and the sound and the, you know, at least theoretically where you're not supposed to be using your phone. Yeah. You know, certainly I'm not, you know, I love sort of being the captive audience, and I look forward to doing more of that again in a few weeks. I had circled on my calendar Morbius as the weekend to go back, but it looks like yeah,
we're gonna have to wait a few more months for that.
I kind of do the same thing with my wife. I'll put on a movie, and it's funny. She gets mad because I'm the one that puts the movie on. It's just like, you put these movies on, and then you just walk away. Right. That's because I'm like, even on my days off, I'm constantly working. I'm constantly thinking about what I need to do, what needs to be done around the house. Because I'm the one that cleans and stuff and does all the housework. And so I'll come into the kitchen and I'll see, oh, there's some dishes right there. Those need to be washed. So I'll start washing the dishes, or I'm like, oh, there's some, you know, something over there that needs to be cleaned up. So I'll start doing that. And then she'll like come in, then I'll come back into the room 30 minutes later. So I'm like, oh, what happened? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you because you're supposed to be in here watching. She's like, you put this movie on and then you leave.
Yeah, it's always better to be in the situation where you can't leave a movie. That would always be my preferred way of doing things.
Yeah. So the last thing we saw in theaters was Ghostbusters.
What you think?
I actually enjoyed it. I've never been a huge Ghostbusters fan, so I think I went into it with like, I wouldn't say little expectation, but I didn't have like that like, nostalgia factor to it where I remember like loving the old ones.
100%. And it's funny you say that because I did see it by myself. I'm a big solo movie going guy. But like my takeaway from it as a huge fan of the original was that I was like, oh, I don't care for this movie, but I think my daughter's really going to like it. I liked that the girl I thought was great in that movie. I try not to get I try not to get too swept up in nostalgia and or too angry when they reboot or remake or soft reboot things I love. Like my big philosophy is like, I think you should get to pick like 3 movies top that you're allowed to be angry about if they remake it. And like everything else, you just got to shrug it. They're going to remake everything. Like I'm going to save my anger for when they try to remake E.T. Like that's it. Like everything else, it's like, what are you going to do?
You mentioned the remake of E.T. because now that's out in the universe. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
No. And even then it's fine. It's like new things don't like, nothing can take away. Like I just don't, I haven't found for myself that like, your love for something you see as a kid isn't, or at least shouldn't be that fragile. Like even to bring it back to Rad, where it's like, so if I watched Rad again, and Rad's terrible, like it doesn't really take away my fond memories of like that excitement of like Friday night at the video store and my mom being like, again, you're going to rent Rad. And I'm like, yeah, I love this movie for a lot of reasons. Like my daughter responded a lot more to Force Awakens than she did to A New Hope. And like, that's okay.
One movie that I know is terrible, but I just love watching it because it just like brings back a lot of memories of me being a kid, is Howard the Duck, which we watched with my son yesterday, and he really enjoys it. And like I love getting, like, it gives me like so much joy watching him watch these movies that we both know are terrible, because he'll tell me like, wow, that's not very good, but it's fun.
That's another one I remember watching a million times as a kid. I loved Howard the Duck. Don't need to rewatch it again. I'll take everyone's word for it that it's terrible.
That awesome box set that you signed for me as well. Yeah, thanks again, honestly, for that. That was like probably one of like the biggest highlights of my year. It was
my pleasure. It was really nice to, I haven't done a lot of events like that. Certainly not. I did a few overseas, but it's only recently that I've started going to conventions. I did 2 last year. That's really been it. I did, in Arizona, and I did one in South Carolina, and I hope it's something that I get to do more of in the coming year and years, because it was really fun. It's really, it's such a voiceover work is such like a solitary experience. Even in the way where like you're just reading your lines most of the time, where like it's a really weird solitary experience, but like someone's putting it all together and they put it out in the world and people like it and respond to it, and it's sort of nice to meet people who it means so much to them. Whether they're into the card game or whether they're just getting into it now, or whether they watched it when they were younger and it meant something to them. It's a really cool thing. And I was glad to meet your wife and your son. I remember them coming in. If I recall, it was we had talked, it was at the end of the day, and we talked about leaving, and I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad she made it there, and I'm glad to have signed that for you.
Yeah, and now that's another project that I have, is trying to get everyone else in the cast to try to sign the whole thing.
There are a lot of people in that cast. Especially you got the complete box set. That's a lengthy project. Your wife didn't know what she signed up for when you got you the first autograph.
That was actually a really good find as well, because I had been searching for this box set for a long time, because I remember every time I almost get my hands on it, it like always sells so fast. And so this one I found for like $40 on eBay. Anytime I go to the store or something, I'm like asking like, hey, look for some cards. If there's some cards there, just grab them for me. Just doesn't matter how many, just grab them all. But it's worked out because I've been lucky enough to actually pull some very rare and very expensive cards. Nice. So and this Christmas too is that she actually gifted me I've been trying to collect all of the different rarities of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I only needed one, which is a Starlight rare, and those are very hard to come by and they're very expensive, and no one likes to sell them because when you do find them, like it's like a grill, right. They don't want to get rid of it. And so she was able to find one for me. Now I have every rarity of the card, and now I can like put a pause to it, because I told her like, as soon as I get that rarity, then I'll just pause. Yeah, and I'm done. So she's like, here you go. Now you can stop. Do you have any upcoming projects or any projects you're working on now that you can talk about?
Shaman Kings is up on Netflix, and I think more is coming. I do a lot of audiobooks. If you like audiobooks, you could, if you want to hear me read you a book, you got a big selection to choose from. And you know what? I'll plug my wife's book. My wife's a writer. She writes for like the 9 to 12-year-old range, and she has a book coming out in a fefew months called Bright. She has a few books out now, but the latest one is called The Prettiest. Go check those out. They're great gifts for kids in that age bracket.
Nice. Yeah, Shaman King is actually one that I've been meaning to sit down and watch.
It's cool. I like this version of it's really cool. Like the animation is great, and it has a real sense of humor, and things got intense on the last episode I recorded. So it's good stuff, and I'm glad it's fun to be back.
I don't know if you've read into it or heard about the kind of newer Yu-Gi-Oh anime that they're trying to put out.
Oh.
Yeah, there's like a newer series that they
what's working the hot on. Goss? They're doing a new Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, or at least that's the plan.
Of course, that's not. Again, back to the reboot thing. It's not surprising. There's money in it for someone, and I hope it's good. I hope I get to make a cameo in it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I come back as a force ghost.
Thanks again for taking time out of your day to sit down and talk to me. This was an awesome conversation.
Of course.
I'm glad I got to talk to you and pick your brain about other things besides Yu-Gi-Oh, even though I could have spent the entire time asking you questions about it.
It's my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here, man.
Yeah, no, thanks again for signing this here for me. This is one of the biggest highlights of my life in general, because like the show and the card game and everything just means so much to me, even since I was a kid. And now as a grown man with kids, I'm happy that I'm able to kind of pass on that love for the show to my own son.
That's awesome. That's very cool. And it was great to meet your wife and son that day too. Take care.
Hey, thank you.
All right. Bye. And for a long time, I started to think I was just making it up, like that there was never a movie called Rad about BMX bike racing. And then like a year ago, I still haven't watched it because I don't want to know that it's terrible, because it was like my favorite movie for like, I guess I was like 7, like every week I would like want to rent it from the video stores. How long ago it was. Then they were like, we're reissuing Rad. And like, then they put it on, I think it's on Showtime, and it's like, oh my God, it does exist. Rad is real. I didn't just invent this.
What? This is ass sliding.